The Midnight Masquerade. In the town of Fenwood, a place that always seemed to be caught between autumn and winter, there stood a house that no one could quite agree existed. Children called it the Gilded House. Grown-ups called it nonsense. But everyone agreed on one point. If you received a black envelope sealed with a golden crescent, you could not ignore it. Marla Northwood didn't expect the envelope to come to her. She was 23, a clerk in the town archives, and she spent her evenings copying old records by candlelight. She had two friends she trusted more than anyone: Jace, the impulsive dreamer, and Theo, the cautious soul who never quite believed in magic. On a dim October morning when rain pressed against the windows, Marla opened her door and nearly stepped on the envelope. She stood frozen, her heart hammering. Rain tapped on the porch rail as though urging her to pick it up. She knelt, fingers trembling. To those who believe in wonder, you are invited to the Midnight Masquerade. At the stroke of midnight, the gates will open. Her throat felt tight. For a moment, she pressed the letter to her chest as though to keep it from vanishing. Theo was the first to arrive at her house that evening, still wearing his gray library cardigan. "You look pale," he said, stepping inside. "Is it true?" She handed him the envelope. He read it twice, then looked up, his mouth open. "Marla," he whispered. I want to go," she said, surprising herself. Theo opened his mouth, shut it again. "All right, then we will go together." Jace arrived soon after, soaked from the rain. When he saw the letter, his eyes lit up. "This is it," he exclaimed. "It's happening." Theo sighed, rubbing his forehead. "You say that about everything." "Yes, but this time it's actually true," Jace shot back, grinning. Marla smiled despite her nerves. She couldn't remember the last time she had felt so alive. They had 3 days to prepare. Each evening, the three of them gathered in the library to pore over old maps and stories. "According to this," Theo said, tapping a cracked leather-bound ledger, "the house was built by Erasmus Vale. They say he never died. He just vanished." "He probably wanted to escape all the gossip," Jace remarked. Marla found a passage that chilled her. Those who enter the masquerade may not all return. She closed the book, heart beating fast. "We'll return," she said. "We have to." The next day they visited the old theater. In a musty storeroom, they sifted through trunks overflowing with velvet and satin. Marla found a gown of silver silk that shimmered like moonlight, with a fox mask lined in blue satin. Theo tried to choose something modest: a dark green frock coat, a simple mask. But Jace insisted he at least try on a gold-trimmed waistcoat. "You look like you belong in a fairy tale," Marla teased. Theo flushed and muttered, "This is ridiculous." Jace, meanwhile, chose a raven-feathered cape and an elaborate half-mask that glimmered with silver. "If we're going," he said, fastening the cape, "we might as well be magnificent." On the night of the masquerade, Fenwood seemed hushed, as though the entire town held its breath. They met at the lakeshore as the church bells began to toll 11. The moon floated low, bright enough to silver the water. Far off, they saw lanterns winking into existence, marking the invisible path to the Gilded House. Marla felt a tug at her heart, a mix of dread and longing. "Do we really want this?" Theo asked. "Yes," she and Jay said together. And so they began their walk, each step carrying them deeper into the unknown. The iron gate swung open without a sound. Beyond, the courtyard gleamed with white stones set in swirling patterns. A fountain splashed golden water into a marble basin. Lanterns floated overhead, bobbing like living stars. At the door waited Calidora, her emerald bird mask glinting in the lamplight. "Welcome," she said. Her voice was soft but carried across the courtyard. "Tonight, you will glimpse what lies beyond the ordinary." Marla felt a shiver of recognition, as though she'd always known Calidora would be here waiting. The doors opened, and music spilled out, strange, rich chords that seemed to resonate in her bones. "Let the midnight masquerade begin!" They stepped into a chamber so vast it could have contained the entire Fenwood Town Square. The ceiling soared overhead, painted in deep indigo and dusted with golden stars that moved and pulsed as though alive. Glass chandeliers floated freely in the air, no chains to anchor them. Long tables were piled with delicacies, candied quince, rosewater tarts, and golden pears that glistened with dew. In the corners, masked musicians played instruments that defied description, harps shaped like crescent moons, viols that glowed from within. Marla could only stare. She felt like she had walked into a dream she'd carried since childhood. "It's too much," Theo breathed. "It's perfect," Jace corrected, his voice hushed. Calidora moved among the guests, greeting each in turn. When she reached them, she paused to study Marla's mask. "The fox," she murmured, "a seeker of hidden truths." Her eyes, what little Marla could see of them, gleamed with curiosity. "Will you dare to find yours?" Marla swallowed and nodded. "Then tonight," Calidor said, "you must visit the chambers meant for you." She gestured to a pair of double doors across the hall. "Beyond lies your true journey." Beyond the grand hall, they entered a corridor lined with dozens of gilded doors. Above each door, a small plaque bore a single word: whispers, echoes, promises, fears, longings, secrets, mirrors, dreams, beginnings. Each door pulsed with a soft golden light. "Do we have to split up?" Theo asked, voice tight. Calidora's voice came from behind them, though they hadn't heard her approach. "You may walk together if you wish, but the rooms will know your hearts. What you find within will be your own." Marla took Theo's hand. "Together," she said. Jace rested a hand on her shoulder. "Let's see what's waiting." They chose the first door. Inside, the chamber was circular and lined floor to ceiling with mirrors. But the mirrors did not reflect their images. Instead, each held a different scene, a moment from their lives. Marla saw herself, at 8 years old, sitting alone in the schoolyard. She watched the girl version of herself pick up a torn library book and cradle it like a treasure. In another mirror, she saw herself standing on a cliff above a dark sea. The wind tore her hair around her face. "You have always wanted to belong," a soft voice whispered from the glass. She pressed her palm to the cool surface. "I still do," she murmured. Beside her, Theo was frozen before a mirror showing him as an old man, alone in a cluttered study. I never thought..." He swallowed hard. "Theo," Marla said, squeezing his hand, "that doesn't have to be you." The second door led to a smaller chamber hung with hundreds of silver ribbons. Each ribbon bore a name. A masked woman in a gown of midnight blue waited by a pedestal. "Choose a ribbon," she said. "Each bears a promise made or broken." Jay stepped forward first. He pulled down a ribbon and read it aloud. "I promise I will not leave." He went still. "My mother used to say that," he whispered, "before she left." No one spoke. Marla reached up and selected her own ribbon. "I promise I will be brave." She felt her throat close because she could not remember ever saying that aloud, but the promise was hers all the same. Here, the walls shimmered like water. In the center stood a low dais, and on it a basin filled with liquid silver. "Place your hands in the pool," instructed a voice overhead. They did. Visions erupted behind Marla's eyes. A library larger than any cathedral, and she was its keeper. A small house near a lake, a child laughing in her arms. A table surrounded by friends she hadn't yet met. Theo's shoulders shook as he pulled away. "I don't know if I want to see," he admitted. Marla rested her hand over his. "You don't have to decide tonight," she said gently. When they returned to the grand hall, the chandeliers had drifted lower. A hush fell as Calidore stepped to the center. "Midnight," she declared. "The hour of the dance." The musicians began a waltz so haunting it made Marla's chest ache. Couples drifted together, their masks gleaming. Marla hesitated until a tall figure in a silver wolf mask approached and held out a hand. "May I?" She nodded, heart fluttering. The stranger's hand was warm, his movements graceful. As they turned in slow circles beneath the living constellations, she felt the world fall away. Later, she found Theo standing alone in the corridor. "I think this is mine," he said, nodding at a black door marked Fears. Marla placed her hand on his arm. "I'll wait right here," she promised. Theo took a deep breath, squared his shoulders, and stepped inside. Time passed. 5 minutes, 10, 20, and when he emerged, his face was pale, but his eyes were clear. "What did you see?" Jace asked softly. "Everything I run from," Theo said, "but I'm still here." Marla hugged him tight. Past midnight, the party moved outside. Through the terrace doors lay a vast garden, lit by thousands of floating lanterns. Winding paths led through tall hedges and pools of lilies. Guests drifted in pairs or trios, murmuring wishes into the darkness. Marla wandered toward a small marble bench beneath a willow tree. She sank down, exhausted and exhilarated. A moment later, Jace sat beside her. "Do you feel like you're dreaming?" he asked. "Yes," she whispered. He was quite a long time. "I think I'm afraid to wake up," he said at last. Marla took his hand. "Then let's stay awake together." As the first hint of dawn silvered the garden walls, Calidora reappeared. "One last choice," she said. She held out a polished wooden box. "Each guest may take one token, but know that what you choose will shape what you remember." Marla reached first. Her fingers closed around a small silver key. Theo chose a ribbon of green silk. Jace selected a single black feather. The guests gathered at the gates. Calidora lifted her hands and the lanterns rose into the sky like a slow constellation. "At sunrise," she said, "the gilded house will sleep again. Carry your memories well." The gates swung open. Marla turned for one last look. At the golden fountain, the tall windows, the impossible beauty. And then the three of them stepped back onto the quiet lakeshore, dawn breaking over Fenwood. Years passed. Marla became the town archivist, and in her study, she kept the silver key on a chain by the window. On cold nights, she could still hear the waltz. Theo wrote 3 books and began a 4th, about a house that no map could find. Jace traveled to distant cities, but every postcard ended the same way. Still searching, still believing. And sometimes, when the October wind turned cold, they gathered by the lake, remembering the night they had found the place where wonder waited